What if luxury didn't come in polished chrome and mirrored walls? What if it whispered instead through timber touched by time and air that still smells like morning? What if elegance wasn't loud, wasn't about showing off, but about coming home to something older than yourself? Did you know that 70% of homeowners feel their space doesn't reflect their style? Don't be part of that statistic. Subscribe and start designing a home that truly feels yours. We've been told for decades that luxury means more gloss, more gold, more noise. But what if we've been looking in the wrong places? What if the richest kind of living isn't found in what's added, but in what's revealed when we strip things back? Beneath the dust of forgotten barns, beneath rusted hinges and crooked nails, there's a story that never stopped breathing. It's the story of stillness, of wide skies and slow coffee, of a place where your voice echoes just a little longer, because silence has room here. They call it Post-Luxe, but it's not a design style. It's a way of remembering, of rebuilding not just walls, but the way we live inside them. A beautiful home is not a dream, it's an art, and you're the artist. Subscribe and start creating spaces that speak to the soul. It's the art of finding beauty where others saw decay, of turning utility into poetry, and letting old bones carry new life. This is where luxury loses its shine and finds its soul. This is where a barn becomes something more than a structure. It becomes a feeling, a way of being, a quiet revolution. And maybe, just maybe, this is what home was always meant to be. Welcome to Post-Luxe. Post-Luxe isn't a trend you follow. It's a truth you remember. Transform your home. Transform your life. Subscribe now, and let's create spaces you'll love forever. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't shine under showroom lights. It waits for those quiet enough to hear it. Because Post-Luxe doesn't shout. It whispers. It is the rebellion of restraint in a world addicted to more. A refusal to let beauty be defined by gloss, sparkle, or spectacle. It is not luxury reimagined. It is luxury rediscovered. Stripped of excess. Free of flash. Honest. Where traditional luxury leans on perfection, Post-Luxe leans into imperfection. It welcomes weathered textures, leans on asymmetry, and leaves room for the story behind the surface. It's where steel meets softness, where stone carries warmth, and where timber tells the truth without being polished first. Post-Luxe lives in the in-between, between silence and sound, between raw and refined, between the past and the life you're building now. It asks nothing of you except to slow down, to notice the grain in the wood, the way the morning light falls across a hand-built table, the echo in a hallway not overfilled with things. It doesn't dazzle the eyes, it stirs the soul. It's not about the new, it's about the meaningful, not about extravagance, but essence. And perhaps that's why it stays with you, long after the first impression fades. Because Post-Luxe isn't here to impress. It's here to hold you, to remind you that beauty can be quiet, that a space can breathe, and that home can be both humble and whole. This is Post-Luxe. Somewhere in the heartland, someone looked at an old barn, not with eyes, but with memory. They didn't see weathered wood or sagging beams. They saw history. They saw promise. And just like that, something shifted. Because barns weren't always just buildings. They were the backbone of early American life, built not for beauty, but for purpose. Structures of survival, of sweat and seasons. Raised by hands, not machines. For decades, they stood quiet sheltering livestock, storing harvests, catching dust and stories in their rafters. Then time moved on. Farms thinned. Machinery replaced touch. And those barns? They waited until someone came back, not to work the land, but to breathe again. Post-Luxe was born not in a studio, but in that moment, when someone walked through a creaking barn door and didn't see ruin. They saw rhythm. The rhythm of old wood beneath bare feet. The silence between the wind and the walls. The warmth that lives in the bones of a place built with care. One couple, newly married, stood in front of the barn that belonged to his grandfather. A place where summers once smelled like hay and tobacco, where time moved like syrup. They didn't want a mansion. They wanted memory. So they began to restore not just the structure, but the spirit inside it. And piece by piece, the space transformed. From a cradle of work to a cradle of wonder. From utility to poetry. That's what Post-Luxe does. It doesn't erase the past. It holds it gently. It adds just enough softness to let the story continue. Because sometimes the most beautiful things aren't built from scratch. They're remembered. Every beam here tells a story. Not because it's new, but because it's been here long enough to matter. And every window, it doesn't frame the view. It invites the sky inside. This is the soul of Post-Luxe. It doesn't shout. It listens. It doesn't decorate. It remembers. Here, design doesn't compete for your attention. It holds it gently, with textures that speak in whispers, raw oak, worn leather, stone that still holds the touch of earth, metals without polish, linen without pretense, materials chosen not for perfection, but for presence. This is not luxury that gleams. This is luxury that grounds. Walls are left bare, but not empty. Surfaces are smooth, but not sterile. There's always something warm to the touch, something aged, something real. The spaces don't impress with grandeur. They invite with grace. Open layouts that breathe. Corners that ask you to slow down. Rooms that unfold, not all at once, but like a slow inhale. And the elements, oh, the elements. Sliding barn doors that carry history on their rails. Floating fireplaces that feel suspended between old and new. Steel beside cedar. Concrete beside cotton. It's the meeting point of industry and nature, and somehow it works. Because here, contrast doesn't clash, it balances. It reminds you that stillness and strength can live in the same place. That softness can rise from structure. That even silence can have shape. This isn't minimalism for the sake of style. It's intention. It's restraint. It's the deep understanding that what we leave out matters just as much as what we bring in. This is Post-Luxe, less flash, more soul. In a Post-Luxe home, time does something strange. It stretches. Mornings feel slower. Conversations last longer. Even silence seems to linger, like it belongs there. You begin to hear things you didn't notice before. The rustle of linen curtains, the soft hum of the wind outside, the quiet thud of your own heartbeat. This isn't just living differently. It's remembering how to live. In a world built on urgency, noise, and neon glow, Post-Luxe invites you back into rhythm. Your own rhythm. No glowing screens on every wall. No sterile white surfaces that echo like waiting rooms. No overstimulation, just space. Space to breathe. Space to be. Here, a cup of coffee in the morning sun isn't part of a routine. It's a ritual. Dinner at the long wooden table isn't rushed. It's gathered. Even the dog seems to stretch slower, as if the floor were warmer beneath his paws. There's something about these walls, these open rafters, this honest light that quiets the mind. Creativity wakes up. Anxiety lies down. The weight you didn't realize you were carrying begins to lift. Because life in a Post-Luxe Barndominium isn't about performance. It's about presence. You stop chasing and start noticing. You realize the simplest moments were always the most beautiful. The way the sun touches reclaimed wood. The echo of laughter in the hallway. The feel of bare feet on cool stone. This home doesn't demand anything from you. It just allows you to be human again. And somehow that feels like the greatest luxury of all. And just when you think it's all nostalgia, the walls hum. Not loudly, not obviously, but softly, like a quiet intelligence, always listening, never interrupting. Because in a Post-Luxe home, technology doesn't shout. It doesn't flash or beep or demand your attention. It simply supports you. Invisible, intuitive, intentional. Behind reclaimed wood ceilings, there's warmth, not from a radiator, but from silent panels that heat the room with infrared light. No vents, no clunky units, just comfort that arrives without being seen. Lights shift with the day, responding to sun and shadow, blending seamlessly into vintage fixtures that feel like they've always been there. This is smart design that doesn't feel technical. It feels human. No glowing screens on the wall, no blinking servers in the closet.